What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 57 of the Steam Deck podcast, Flip Screen Games weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete Messi, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back. We got a big week.
Very big week. Finally.
SteamOS
The final
3.5
week.
is
Yeah.
here.
When did we first start talking about this? I feel like it was March. It was a long time ago.
I was gonna say I think it was Q1 of this year. It was not quite the beginning of the year, but close enough.
Well, I remember we've done multiple episodes about features that have made it into SteamOS 3.5. We did an episode about VRR on the way. We did an episode about the features of potentially SteamOS 3.5. We did an episode about the SMT toggle thing. There's
We
like
did an
been
episode talking
so
about
many.
we did an episode talking about the potential ramifications of it being a alternative to Windows for PC gamers.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and whether
we-
it's going to be the version that has like an installer. That was 3 months ago. The one where it was like, is it going to have an installer?
Yeah.
We spoke 4 months ago about like the saturation controls and things like that.
Point
There
being,
is so many times we've spoken about
a hot
this.
topic for us this
Yeah.
year. And it's like we're on the cusp of it, right? Like obviously it's just entered preview. So we're not at beta yet. We're not at full release,
Well,
but
preview is the new name for beta.
oh,
So,
okay.
like,
I didn't realize that
it's
they
like
changed the name. Sorry
the
about that.
stable channel, the preview channel, the beta
Gotcha.
candidate channel, and then the main channel, which is like coming in really hot. So it's finally made it. This is like the first time it's hit beta.
So you've installed it. You've been playing around with it today. I haven't gotten to check it out yet, and I have lots of questions for you. But I guess before we get into specifics, what are your overall impressions after a couple hours fooling around with it? Does it feel like it's living up to your expectations?
No, it's not. It's
Oh
it's
no. Oh
it's
no. I wasn't expecting that.
It's not ready. It's not ready for stable. I hope they don't release this on stable for a very long time. And it's a bit disappointing considering it's been in development for so long. It feels like they've been distracted probably with a Steam VR project. And are now only coming back round to finishing up 3.5. But if you use this docked, I'll talk a little bit about it later on. If you use this docked, you can have serious problems. It's not ready there. If you're entirely handheld and you never play your Steam Deck dock, then this is a really good update.
Okay.
We've finally got the vibrancy and temperature sliders, and Valve did something interesting, which I never expected them to do. They now natively emulate sRGB, the sRGB color space, rather than the color space that was native to the panel, which means that by default out of the box, when you install SteamOS 3.5, your screen will be a little bit more vibrant and a little bit warmer. You can tweak that. You can turn that back down, and it's a full slider range up from the native default all the way up to, they call it boosted mode. So you can have it really, really vibrant if you want. And you can, if you prefer a cooler color tone or a warmer color temperature, you can change that as well. You can toggle those, which is really nice.
No, answer a question for me there. Does that impact performance at all? Or is that just
No,
kind of
not
like,
at all.
okay, that's what I figured. I figured it was just kind of like,
It's like just changing the screen
Display-
brightness.
yeah, it's
Remember,
a
like you
display
used to have the
functionality.
buttons on your monitor, and you would like change them in there. You know, it's
Yeah.
like similar to that. It's all done through GameScope, which is the like layer over the top of SteamOS that renders all the images in game mode. It's built on Wayland.
Okay, I figured it was probably something like that. But like when you hear, what did you just call it? The ultra vibrancy mode or whatever?
Boosted mode, they call it.
Boosted mode. You hear that and you're like, oh, like is that
Basically,
it sounds like a performance thing,
It looks crazy, and it's similar to the Switch OLED has this as well. It has like a boosted mode, and by default, the Switch OLED boosts the colors, and you can turn it down in the settings. But people really like boosted colors. It's not native, and it's not what the artist necessarily intended you to see, but it's a choice that you can make as a player. If you want to have your colors like crazy saturated, you can do that now.
Very nice. I think for some games, I can definitely see the benefit of something like that because there are certain games where like the palette is like maybe a little overly muted, and I could see that adding some like nice dynamic contrast to something like maybe like
Yeah.
Fallout or something like that,
Oh,
right?
well, yeah, Fallout's just gonna boost the green. It's gonna look even greener than it
But
did before.
those greens will really pop, you know.
Yeah, it'll be nuclear. That's for sure.
So what other display changes are we looking at?
So, on the internal display, because there are some changes that are specific to external displays, they've finally brought in the stretch and zoom scaling options. So, if you have a game that's 16 by 9, you can now choose to either zoom in and it will keep the aspect ratio, but zoom in, so you'll miss a little bit off the side of the screen, or you can stretch it to fill that 16 by 10. I personally hate both of those options, and I'd rather play the game with black bars top
I
and
don't know
bottom,
why
but
you would
some
ever
people really like it.
Yeah, I don't know why you would ever do that. But I'll say this, no judgment. If that's how you like to play, that's cool. You know, we accept all kinds here. But my question is why? If somebody in this
Some
audience
people get really distracted by black bars top and bottom on
wouldn't you
their
be distracted by there being missing content or the everything
yeah,
being distorted though?
a
Like,
little bit it's only gonna be a tiny bit stretched, but it would be enough for me to notice that I would be annoyed by it.
yeah, but, like, it's obvious that it's stretched, you know, like, it's only a little bit, but to me, it reminds me of, did you ever play a Game Boy Color game or a Game Boy
On a
Proper,
Game Boy Advance,
and
yeah,
you'd
and you could
press
stretch
R
it,
and it would
yeah.
stretch it, and it's like, "This looks fucked up." Like, this
It's like,
is
who's playing it like this now, yeah.
yeah, it's
Mario's
like,
even fatter than he usually is, yeah.
leave the black bars, they're fine.
Well, it's an option, and people like choice, and it's there now, which is good. They also added in NVIDIA image scaling (NIS), but I have a feeling this is a bug, and it shouldn't be there. This was added in like
I'm sorry,
SteamOS
you think it's a
3.3.
bug that the feature is present at all?
I think it's a bug that is visible on the Steam Deck. I think
Interesting.
it's in SteamOS 3.3. I think they added this and to the Steam client. And I think it's only for NVIDIA cards. So I have a feeling that'll be gone soon. But I might be mistaken. They might be using NVIDIA image scaling and it works on AMD cards. I don't know why you'd use that over FSR or linear scaling, but the option's there. I don't know if it does anything. I
That's
haven't really tried
interesting.
it. Haven't had a need to try it.
It's so funny because when you said that, you were like, "Oh, I think it's a mistake," and I was like, "Why?" And like, not even thinking that that's an AMD inside this Steam Deck. It's like, all right, duh. Why would there be any? Yeah, why would you even have that? But it's interesting. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, maybe they're taking advantage of it somehow. Maybe it is just an error, but I don't know. Maybe that it speaks to the idea of maybe like an eGPU, like you've been saying at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, but I feel like they need to make these switches visible when relevant, right? Because they've
Yes,
also added in HDR and VRR support. The VRR toggle is there 100% of the time. When you're in handheld mode, the VRR toggle's there and it just is grayed out and says the display doesn't support it. Well, if I'm in handheld mode and the Steam Deck doesn't currently support it, one, maybe they're releasing a Steam Deck that does have VRR, and maybe that's the reason why it's there.
sure.
But if that's not the case, then get rid of the toggle. I don't need to see it. It's just cluttering up the space, and I can, I can press the button and it does a doo 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 noise when you like press it, and like it's like grayed out. Similarly, the HDR toggle's there, but the HDR toggle disappears when the screen doesn't support HDR. So I don't know
Wait, what?
why. I don't
That's
know
so
why
funny.
the VRR one stays, but the HDR one goes away when
I
it's
was
not needed.
I was about to I was about to like play devil's advocate and be like, maybe that's a thing they're planning on getting out before it reaches stable and it's like finicky or something and they left it in there for now just but it's like, wait, what? One of them
Mm.
goes away, but the other one doesn't? And the Steam Deck doesn't even support VRR. That's so funny.
Yeah, it's really weird. I think it's a quirk of how they handle the image display. So everything goes
Okay.
through DisplayPort. The panel that's in the Steam Deck goes through a DisplayPort connection, and so Linux sees it as DisplayPort. And I
Okay.
think when you plug in an external display, that also goes in as DisplayPort, and it does a conversion to HDMI. And so
Mm.
I think maybe Linux doesn't realize, or SteamOS doesn't realize that both of them are DisplayPort, yes, but one of them's an internal screen and is never going to support VRR, so you don't need to show the toggle for that. It would be good if they could kind of figure it out to hide it. I understand wanting to show the toggle when it's docked and being able to see that it's docked, and knowing that, oh, something's not right in my setup. VRR toggle's there, but it's not currently supported for some reason. I can understand wanting to keep the toggle around for that, but I don't need to see it in the quick access menu when I'm in handheld mode. It's just annoying that it's there. It's just another toggle that I need to scroll past to get to what I want in the performance tab. And that performance tab's getting really cluttered. I feel like they need to rearrange things in there a little bit at some point. Um,
So I know you've had so you talked about this. I don't remember if you said this on the show last week or if we talked about it offline, but you were talking about wanting to do a video. You bought this new high quality cable. You were going to try to test some of these features, and you said earlier, right, that you talk about the output to a second
mhm.
display. How is that working? And are you finding that you're able to take advantage of this stuff like you wanted to, or what? Like I know you've run into some problems, but what are they, and how much are they a problem?
So this is the biggest issue that I have with SteamOS 3.5 as it currently stands in preview. And obviously this may all be fixed by the time it reaches stable. I hope so. So when you update to SteamOS 3.5, you'll get, if you use the official Steam Deck dock, the dock will get a firmware update, and it will then supposedly support HDR and VRR. I had no issues with HDR. Wonderful. Looks great. Looks really nice. The whole UI gets output in HDR as well,
Oh,
so you get really
nice.
nice colors. You don't have
Huge.
to worry about any of that stuff. And the games are all rendered in HDR when supported as well. So Baldur's Gate 3 looked really good. VRR support, however, is is a mess at the moment. It's confusing. It's not clear if it is ever going to work over HDMI or if it's not going to work over HDMI. So VRR has multiple implementations. So my TV is an LG BX or CX. It supports AMD FreeSync as well as the HDMI standard HDMI 2.1 VRR mode.
Let me pause you right there. Should I show the video that you've included here now?
You can do, yeah. So at
Okay,
the moment,
pull
on
this up.
when you have an LG TV, and this is from all LG TVs from the C9 all the way up to the latest version, so that's from any TV from 2018 onwards. If the HDMI port has AMD FreeSync turned on, and it's turned on by default, when you plug your Steam Deck in, it will no longer render an image. It will not output an image until you turn off AMD FreeSync Premium on your TV. And this has to be a bug. This has to be an issue with the implementation of AMD FreeSync on SteamOS because it doesn't happen when I downgraded to SteamOS 3.4.8 to double check.
Really?
Had no issue with it. It's an
Whoa.
issue in SteamOS 3.5 and it's being tracked on GitHub currently. There's a lot of people that have had this issue. On the LG C1, which is a newer TV than mine, it's even worse. Apparently, it just doesn't work entirely until you downgrade to SteamOS 3.4.8. VRR, so someone on GitHub said VRR is enabled on the display, but not on the Steam Deck because the option's grayed out and you can't turn it on. I've tried manually enabling it in desktop mode, and it doesn't work. People have had issues with Philips TVs that also support it. I have tried through the HDMI cable. I've tried multiple HDMI cables. I tried the one that came with my Xbox and the one that came with my PlayStation. I've tried an old HDMI 1.8 cable. Uh, all of that gives me an issue. Until I turn off FreeSync on my TV, then it works. And I had no issue previously. So if you have encountered this issue with SteamOS 3.5, turn off FreeSync on your TV if it supports it, and then you will be able to get a picture.
That is so strange. What do you make of this error? Like, what do you think's going on?
So I'm pretty sure the implementation of FreeSync is balked, and I think the TV is getting a signal from the Steam Deck saying that the Steam Deck supports AMD FreeSync, but it's not outputting a FreeSync image because the option's grayed out on the Steam Deck. But you can't turn VRR on unless you can see it on the TV. And as soon as you turn FreeSync off, then the Steam Deck thinks that VRR is not supported because FreeSync's turned off in the TV settings. So you can't make them match up. So if you want to use VRR at the moment via AMD FreeSync over HDMI, it's not currently possible. And it's a real shame. And I tried working around this by using the DisplayPort socket on my Steam Deck dock and using an active cable. So there's two different types of cable, active and passive, which supports DisplayPort plus plus. And that didn't work either. VRR didn't work through that. I kind of expected it wouldn't. But it's a real shame because I was really looking forward to VRR. It was going to be it's the big headline feature for me at least is VRR support. Means I wouldn't have had to worry about making sure I hit 40 frames per second on my 120 hertz panel, and I could have just had VRR or FreeSync just kind of tidying everything up. And it's a mess, and I hope it gets fixed. It seems like it might actually be a Linux kernel issue. Someone reported there seems to be in the Linux kernel 6.1 that SteamOS 3.5 is using. Um, and I know that FreeSync is a pain, and HDMI free VRR is not possible on Linux due to proprietary licensing reasons. But AMD have committed code to the Linux kernel to enable FreeSync. FreeSync does work over HDMI on Linux. It's just broken in SteamOS currently. I managed to, with an X11 config file, turn it on in the desktop mode, and my TV then reported that FreeSync was enabled, but the Steam Deck was still not outputting a FreeSync signal. It was still outputting a static 60 hertz or 120 hertz signal. So I know that a FreeSync signal from the Steam Deck to my TV is possible. Is just not being output by the Steam Deck, and I'm hoping that they can fix the connection problem or enable you to turn on VRR mode for the socket for the display you're about to plug into. They've got at the moment the safe mode that you can turn on. It would be nice if they had an option in the display settings to be like enable VRR for external display. I can plug it in, see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I can unplug it and turn VRR off. That seems like a solution that would solve it
Yeah.
almost immediately. And I don't know why it's not there currently.
I mean, you gotta hope that that's, I guess, why we're in, the testing phase right now, right? That they'll get this kind of feedback from users like you, and then hopefully we'll get it implemented properly.
Yeah, there's 22 people that have reported the issue over on GitHub by the looks of it. So it seems like the issue is, and it's been reported multiple times over multiple issues, and people are, and it seems to be not just with the Steam Deck dock. It seems to be with other docks as well, third party docks. I did try a third party dock that I've got, and that doesn't even support HDR. So your mileage will vary depending on what dock you've got. Some docks will support HDR and VRR, some won't at all. Um, the Steam Deck dock does support HDR and VRR. It's just a bit of a messy implementation at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you feel confident that they're gonna solve the problem? Because it's like, on the one hand, I wanna say yes, because I feel like generally they are so proactive with identifying these problems and then coming up with solutions. But in the same breath, I think one of the worst things that they've done has been the docked experience, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
they
big
talked
time.
about that from the launch as it being part of this thing's functionality, that it would be able to have that Switch-like docking experience, and that there would be this proprietary dock that they were gonna release, and it would have these updates, and it would be a seamless experience. And, in our review that we did of it when it first came out, we talked a lot about, like, it's overall a good quality product for the price, and, like, the fact that you get this extra charger and, yada yada. But, like, I feel like our faith in them for improving the docked experience has not really been rewarded. Whereas, like, I think in the other, when it comes to software side of updates and implementations, do generally still feel pretty confident that they're gonna come up with solutions that are elegant and quick, right? But, like, you've not really seen that same sense of urgency
Uh,
with improving the
yeah.
dock,
I mean, I
experience.
100% agree with you. I mean, and up until now, still, right? You go to the page on for the Steam Deck dock, you go down to the tech specs section. Prior to us even buying it, right? I did a review, and they, after the fact, put this up in the middle of me doing the review. They had to add two like asterisks. MST support currently requires both HDMI and display ports to be in use. Update is forthcoming. FreeSync support is in progress. Update is forthcoming. 3.5 is the update we're waiting for to enable FreeSync support. Still not fully baked. And I get that this is a preview, but we've been waiting so long for this. I mean, when did I do this the doc review? That was last year, right?
I'll look it up. Yeah, we did it right when it came out, right? So
It
I
was sometime last year because I remember doing the doc review, and my dad asked me, should I get the official doc or should I get a third party doc? And I was like, get the official doc because they'll do these firmware updates and you'll get a charger bundled with it. But the firmware updates, like you say, have been few and far between. They've not really added any additional functionality. Now we are getting HDR support through it, which is great, and supposedly FreeSync support. But
yeah,
it's just when.
it was 11 months ago when we did
Yeah,
the
so
review.
it's taken a year for them to add support for this. That's a very long time. It really feels to me like the team has been stretched thin, and they're working on a lot of projects internally, and the dock got sidelined, and that's fair enough. External display support got sidelined. They focused on the core product of the Steam Deck, which is the handheld
Yeah, you
experience.
got to imagine they recognize that it's probably a not a huge percentage of the user base that's clamoring for these features, and that's not to like excuse the fact that they're still not here. Like the fact that we're 11 months out and they sold us a product for nearly $100 and it still doesn't do the things that it's promised it can do. That is a problem. Like
Yeah,
I'm not giving them a pass, but I feel like I'm with you where like I get it. Like I get why that's the decision because I don't know how many people are really trying to use the Steam Deck that way anyway. And you could argue that maybe more people would if the experience was better and yada yada. But like we know that they're launching another VR headset. You know, we talked last week about
we don't know that yet. We think it's coming, but we
well,
don't know for certain.
no, we know it's coming. We just don't know if it's coming imminently, right? Like because we talked last week about
I mean, I thought SteamOS 3.5 was coming imminently 7 months ago,
but
and it took
but
a long time.
we know the Deckard
Yeah.
exists though, right?
We've
Obviously
seen
plans can
patents
change,
for
but
it, we've seen rumors for it, but, yeah, we don't know
yeah.
if and when it's coming at any time.
But point being, they've been working on it, right? So like
Yes.
that device is in active development. We talked last week about the rumors about this, you know, console-fied PC that is potentially part of their VR strategy, that is potentially another SKU. Like that could be another device that's been, you know, taking a certain amount of their attention away from improving the docked experience. Um, you know, that doesn't feel good that we paid for a product that in retrospect feels underbaked. I still think it's a good value. I still think if you need a dock that's probably the one you should buy because you're getting the charger and
I tell you what though,
it's like a
it didn't
$50
feel
charger. But
it did not feel like a good value when I updated to SteamOS 3.5 and
and now you can't use it.
I went to go plug in to play some Jackbox with some friends that came over. The fucking thing didn't work, and I had to go and get the external little Amazon dongle,
Yeah.
and that thing worked. And
That sucks.
it's like this is a crappy experience. It's crummy.
And that's I guess that's where my reservation comes from, right? Is like, are they going to solve this problem? Are they going to
Yeah. I
give
think
you
they
that
have to.
improved
The num
experience?
it's not just LG TVs that are affected. I have an LG TV, so I know about that, but there are people reporting that they've had the same issue with Philips TVs, with Samsung displays, with all sorts of TVs that support FreeSync. I think because this is a default on so many displays that FreeSync is just on all the time, some displays don't even let you turn it off. I'm fortunate that my TV does because otherwise I would have had to downgrade to SteamOS 3.4.8 and I wouldn't have been able to use any of the HDR features with it. If it's not someone like me. They update and it just breaks. They're just like, "Oh, it's bricked. It doesn't work anymore." And it was working perfectly. The setup on my TV is the same. Nothing else has changed. It just doesn't work anymore. And you go and you plug in a third party dock and that works. Your instincts go the same. Mine did initially. It was like, "Oh, the firmware update has bricked my dock. Great." But that's not the case. It's just a weird configuration issue between SteamOS and the TV, and it not communicating that VRR is on. And there are people that have looked through the logs, and they're just like, "Yep, the SteamOS knows that the display supports VRR, but you cannot turn it on." And so there's like a miscommunication between the two, and that's where the issue lies.
And for you to figure that out, you need to have a pretty high level of technical know-how or
Yeah.
be a member of, like, the GitHub community, right? Which is, like, that's a very specific Venn diagram of and subset of users, right? Like, the idea that the average user that bought this device is gonna update the firmware and it just stops working,
My dad's going to, right? If this
that's
comes
bad.
out unstable, if this comes out to stable and my dad updates to it, he's got an LG C1 or C2. He's gonna plug it into his dock. He's gonna expect it to show up on his TV so he can play Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever he's playing, and it's not gonna work. And he's gonna be like, "Why?" Well, I can tell you why. It's because they've screwed something up. And you can fix it by downgrading currently, but if this makes it to stable from preview without being fixed, then that's a serious problem. I don't think it will. I think they will
No,
fix
yeah,
this
I'm
before
with
it
you.
gets there.
I think they'll fix it too. I guess it's just a matter of how long it takes
Yeah,
to do
I
that.
know. Like, I don't wanna be waiting another 7 months for them to figure this out, for it to then get through to stable.
I guess the hope is that it won't take that long because it's moved this far now, like, and usually things don't stay in beta that long before they move to stable, so hopefully this is, like, uh, emblematic of the idea that this is now the primary focus, is getting this updated and finalized and ready to go, but
Yeah.
big if. Well, that's a
I might
bummer,
what I might do is try because 'cause I've still got Windows, 10 on that, um,
that flash card.
that little flash stick. I might see if FreeSync works with that, and then I'll know
That'd be interesting.
definitively that SteamOS is the problem and that they might be able to fix that because and it's not a hardware issue and it's not configuration. It rules that out at that point, and it is just if something is SteamOS, it can be fixed with software. And I hope it can because a lot of people will benefit from VRR, especially as you scale up on a TV. You know, you can hit 40 frames per second at 800p, but if I want to get to around 40 frames per second on a 1080p screen and it sometimes dips down to 35, FreeSync will smooth that out for me and it'll be perfect. And I'll have a great experience with stuff like Diablo 4 or Baldur's Gate 3, and that's what I was hoping for with FreeSync when this update was announced.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, here's hoping, right? Like, it's something that they've obviously, been thinking about for a long time now, 11 months. So hopefully a final satisfactory solution is near at hand.
Yeah, and this update really seems focused on the external stuff, right? You've got the HDR support and the VRR support that it really only benefits external displays because the internal display won't do it. And it's weird that these bugs happen, but also there's some other weird stuff that when you dock it, the Steam Deck's backlight stays on now all the time. It doesn't turn off the display like it used to. So you just have like a slightly gray glowing screen behind next to your TV as you play. Again, I think that's something that can easily be fixed in a patch. And if you boot up the Steam Deck, say it's off, entirely off, and you go plug it in and you boot it up when it's in the dock, HDR will be washed out and you have to like unplug it and plug it back in. Or if you were in HDR and you unplug it and then you go to desktop mode, then desktop mode looks too dark and it's like really weird text rendering. You have to restart the Steam Deck in order to fix it. These are all minor things. The big thing is VRR, but that combined with the fact that external drives now auto mount when it's docked could make Steam Deck a really, really great little computer for your living room because you can have all of your games. stored on an external drive, like they're ready to go. Games that you maybe only play on your TV, right? I'm thinking stuff like Jackbox or multiplayer games, something like Multiverses. You might only want to play that on your TV when your friends come round, and you might not play that on the go. You can have that on an external drive, so it's not taking up space on your Steam Deck or your SD card. And then when you dock it, you get VRR, you get HDR, you get access to all of those games, and you can just play them. That really excites me as well, the fact that external
That's really
drives are now
attractive.
supported.
Yeah, especially if they're able to get like the docked experience improved and everything like we're talking about. Like it would, I think, go a long way to having that more modular experience that we've talked about. Where like if there are, like maybe like a bigger, more like AAA game that like doesn't run as well. Like I don't know, like I'm thinking about like something like I guess Baldur's Gate 3 is even a great example, right? Like that runs really well in handheld mode, but I could see you wanting to plug it in and turn the shadows up and take advantage of that stuff and play it that way instead. And that's a huge game, right? Like that game takes up like most of the hard drive space on my Steam Deck right now, right? So if I did get to a point where I was like, I'm finding I'm enjoying playing this on the TV more than handheld. I want to get more games back on the deck. You could like have that degree of separation of like these are my TV games, these are my on the go
Yeah.
games. I think that's really cool.
And you can just swap them out. You can go into the storage section and you can move things between the storage, which is really good. So it's a nice feature to have.
Yeah,
And
that's
I,
cool.
I was, I was thinking you could also have like some ROMs on there if you're emulating stuff and you want to be able to kind of swap them back and forth. You can do that. You'd need to go into desktop mode in order to do that, but it would auto mount now. You wouldn't need to mount it manually. And the SMT changes are a big deal for emulation in SteamOS 3.5. We've known about these for a long time. We've known that they made it into SteamOS 3.5. We spoke about them, right? But they're finally here for people who on the beta channel who aren't, bleeding edge, wanting to run from main. You no longer need power tools at all. If you're playing emulator games, use I did a whole video on it, right? How to get the most out of GameCube emulation. And most of it still stands, right? But the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway from that video is use power tools, disable simultaneous multi-threading, so that the three cores can get as much power as possible. And it automatically disables it now, as it should. So you don't have to worry about that. So when you're emulating now, if you use EmuDeck, you can just, or even if you've installed Dolphin from the Discover store, you can just go ahead and you can play your games and you don't have to worry about any slowdown, which is
And
great.
it'll do that for you. Like you don't have
Yeah,
to
it
go
does it
and
for you. It
toggle it or
automatically detects that SMT should be disabled for this specific use case.
that rules. That's such a
Yeah, it's really
like
good.
this is what I'm talking about though, right? Like what a specific thing that was affecting a subset of users and they're like, "Cool, got it. It's built in now." Like
There's a lot of
they're great
users.
about that.
Yeah.
They're really great about that.
Yeah, and this doesn't only affect emulation. It does affect older games as well, like older games that
Sure,
weren't built for SMT or hyperthreading. Um, but for the most part, it was people emulating games that needed as much power to the fewer cores as possible.
Excuse me. Very cool. Very cool functionality to see them get figured out. So, we got a couple more things to talk about with these 3.5 updates, as well as some questions from the audience. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of September. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Asobi, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go check out those sister shows, if you want to write in to the Steam docket, just like a bunch of folks did this week, all about Steam OS 3.5, or if you want to go above and beyond and show your support, just like the Patreon producers did, you can find links to all that and much more at flipscreen.games. That's our website. Go over there, click on some stuff, however you choose to get involved or show your support. Steve and I thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. All right, Steve. So we got a couple more deets to get through.
Mm.
Tell me about the Mango HUD overlay.
So I know this is a big thing for a bunch of people. And I know there was a few people on the Discord that were talking about this, and they were really excited about it. I think Pilkey was one of them. I think Team Linux was another. And the performance overlay that you can have, where it shows you the frame rate, maybe the little graph.
Yeah.
Well, out of the box, Valve obviously made their own defaults, right? So it goes from level 1 up to level 4, and it gets progressively more detailed. You can now completely customize that if you want to. If you're a big nerd like me, you can make yourself a config file, a presets config file, and you can have a look on the Mango GitHub. I think there's a couple of guides floating around. I'll see if I can put one in the description. And you can basically put whatever you want in there. So you can say, I've built one where all I've got is the frame rate and the battery life. So I can see the frame rate, make sure that's stable, and I can also have the battery life. I saw some people wanted the time on the screen at all times. You can have the time there as an overlay now, which is great because a lot of people lose track of time. They want hyper focus on what game they're playing, and they lose track of time. You can have the clock there at all times if you want to on the overlay. So you can truly customize it now to have whatever you want, and you can customize each preset level. You only have 4 of them. You still only have the 4 options, but you can customize each one individually and have whatever you want there, which is really nice.
That's really cool. Let me ask you a question. I saw on the Steam Deck subreddit some weeks ago that somebody was talking about how if you don't have a HUD overlay, it can, or sorry, when you do have a HUD overlay, it can influence performance in a negative way. And that there are certain games where getting rid of those performance metrics will actually help you eke out a slightly better performance. So with something like this, if I'm making a custom that is spitting out less information, is
Mhm.
that taking less pull from your device?
I don't know that the performance hit is even there. I think it's kind of negligible. MangoHUD's pretty much always running on Steam on the Steam Deck game mode, from what I can tell, and a lot of it goes through there, right? Um, Back when before we had the vibrancy slider, there was vibrant deck on as a decky plugin that went through Mango HUD in order to tweak the colors. So a lot of stuff goes through Mango HUD. um I can't say for certain that the timing charts aren't making a slight performance hit, but I mean, I'd imagine it's what, 1 frame per second, if
Yeah,
anything.
it's
I think it's
interesting.
more just for if you want to customize it, if you want to, change the font, add a background, pull out things that the default overlays don't pull out, like the time, for example, you can do that.
Sure.
Um, and it's nice. It's
Yeah,
nice
or
to be able to
if it's given
customize it.
information that you don't care about, that's then taking up screen real estate. Like
Yeah, I think
that
a
makes a
lot
big
of
difference.
people, it's giving information people don't care about. You go up to the I think it's level 3, and it's showing me fan speed and stuff, and I'm like, I really don't care about any of this. I'm
Yeah,
here just for really. I'm in there to check the frame rate, maybe the timing charts, maybe see what the GPU and
right.
CPU load is to see if it's um, balanced nicely versus CPU and GPU load. But for the most part, all I want to see is battery life and maybe frame rate, maybe the time.
Okay. So now talk to me about the firmware update you've got here because you say undervoting should now be possible with new voltage offset settings, but I couldn't find these in the BIOS. Translate this for me, because I got to tell you, this is the only thing out of all your notes. I was like, I don't know what any of these words mean.
So
What is undervolting?
Oh, so you can undervolt or overvolt a CPU or a GPU. If you undervolt it, it will deliver less power to it, right? Fewer volts. So
I'm
you
with
know how
you.
you have
Is
it's similar to
similar to
underclocking and
overclocking?
overclocking.
Gotcha.
Similar.
Okay.
So
Okay. All
similar
right.
to that.
I know
It
what that is.
still runs at the same clock speed, so
Uh
it
huh.
still run at the same hertz, but it it gets less power. So if
Okay.
you every single GPU, CPU, APU is slightly different, even if it's the same model, right?
Hmm.
The one you have in your device might have hit the lottery. It might be able to eke out so much more performance, but with less power. And Cryobyte did a really great video on this, on how you can undervolt and overvolt your Steam Deck and also overclock it. and I
Nice.
recommend going to check out his video. But now undervolting and overvolting is built in, and you don't need to, or theoretically it's built in. I couldn't find the option. I have no idea where it is, and I saw a bunch of people in the comments on the post that Valve put out. But I could not find it, so my guess would be it's probably there, but no one knows where, or maybe
It's
they
probably
put it
just
out,
another
but they
glitch, like
forgot.
the grayed out thing where it's like,
Yeah.
this should be here, right? Like, did you forget to toggle it on? Like
So this is another nerd feature similar to, increasing the frame buffer rate size from
Sure.
1 GB to 4 GB. You can go in and do that. If you want to eke out, say, more battery life from your Steam Deck, you might want to undervolt the CPU and the
Gotcha.
GPU. And if you're happy that it's not making performance, giving you any performance hits, um, then great. You're going to get a little bit more battery life out of your Steam Deck without having to worry about it. Or if you want to give it a little bit more power, I don't know if you can overvolt it. My guess would be it's only probably undervolting, because Valve don't want anyone
Like
melting
blowing.
their
Yeah,
their
exactly.
devices.
That could get dicey. So, I mean, I hear your disappointment, but it sounds like there's a lot here that feels like it's still very much in development and that like these it's here to get these kinks worked out. So, hopefully the next couple of weeks are eventful and we have a big update for you every week that, another one of these features has gotten, the rough edges sanded down cuz it feels like that's where we're going.
That would be my guess. I've just read apparently that they've released another BIOS update. So they spoke about firmware version 116. Apparently, version firmware 118 is now available. So I might need to update my Steam Deck again, and that does have options in the BIOS for undervolt, but no overvolt.
So there you
So
go. So even by the time we recorded this, it's already getting updates rolled out. So that's pretty good.
But yes, I'm disappointed, but it's because, I've been banging the VRR drum for like since the Steam Deck got released, right?
It's like
And
expectation. It's like you've been waiting for
yeah.
this for so long and to get there and have it still be underbaked. I get that. Like
Yeah, and it's on other devices. The arguably the Steam Deck's biggest competition, the ROG Ally, the cheaper version came out this week, the Z1 version, not the Z1 Extreme. So it's on par now in terms of price point with the 512 GB model. That's got a VRR panel built into the actual device. It supports variable refresh rate. And there's no issues when you dock that thing with, is VRR going to work? Is it not going to work? And that's a real shame. Like, I really hope that Valve can fix that one specific thing, 'cause I do think VRR is a game-changing feature.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is. I think that could be one of the things that really goes a long way in making the docked experience more, viable, right? And like a legitimate way you'd want to consider playing rather than, something that feels like it's just so loaded with compromises. It's almost like why bother?
Mhm.
So we have a couple questions from the community here about 3.5. I want to jump into this first one. This one comes from Grassy Crow MK5, who wrote in on the Discord and said, "I'm curious about if and when the OS will have an easy option for dual boot, or does it already in preview?"
Sadly, it does not. So in order to dual boot, you're gonna need to reflash your Steam Deck, and you're gonna need to wait for the SteamOS installer for that, which is still not here. I'm hoping when this hits stable, that's the point where they're just like, "Oh, here you go. You can now install this on any other PC that you want." Because at the moment, the only way to install this on another PC is with the Hollow ISO, which is like extracted from the Steamo deck itself, and it's not great. So no, unfortunately, you still can't easily dual boot on the Steam Deck.
You think that's functionality that'll ever come? I can't imagine. Like,
Yes.
you think they'll have official support for that at some point?
Yeah, they announced it when they announced the Windows drivers. So again,
Really?
we've been waiting for
Oh,
this for like 18 months. They
I don't
said
think
that
I
dual
knew
boot
that.
is coming. Yeah, dual boot is
I mean, or
coming.
I forgot, I guess. But yeah, that's cool. Okay, nice. Well, good to know. This next one comes from Syrian3, who wrote in and said, "Will Discord voice chats work properly? Can the sound level be set differently from the game audio?"
Not in game mode. Nothing's changed on that front. You cannot change. There's no like audio mixer, unfortunately. You can on desktop mode. You can turn down the game volume. My recommendation for it, and it's a pain in the ass, right? You're gonna have to go into the game's audio settings and turn down the master volume slider on whatever game you're playing. Have Discord running in the background. Um, it's a shame, but you could always use Steam's built-in voice jack because I know you had
It's
really
really
good.
good.
Yeah, you had really good use with that.
Yeah, I did. Obviously Discord is, it's Discord, right? So it's a lot more ubiquitous and, your friends are going to be on Discord already, but if you're, only partying up with like one or a couple friends or whatever and you guys are playing a Steam game, then I really don't think there's any reason to not use the native chat. It is so much better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, I know,
When I was
especially
playing when I was
considering
playing
no one uses it.
multiverses. Yeah, yeah, literally, right? Who's using it? Because Discord is so popular. And if you're on a PC, you're using Discord. But yeah, when I was playing multiverses all the time last year with my friend Jack, that was the only way that we did voice chat was like we were both on Steam Deck. We both sometimes didn't even have headphones on and are just talking into the Steam Deck. And it, God bless it, it worked really well. So, you know, viable alternative if you need something in the meantime.
Mhm.
This next one comes from Stevie Yaki, who wrote in and said, "Does the update benefit streaming Starfield in any way? Because that's all I do."
It benefits Starfield in multiple ways. They specifically, and not streaming, right? They specifically called out Starfield in the changelog. They said updated graphics drivers with many performance and functionality improvements, improved performance for Starfield, fixed view model corruption in Amnesia the Bunker, and launch failures for Immortals of Avium and Kaiju A Go Go. So Starfield it should run smoother on the Steam Deck, but I have also found, Stevie, that I stream it from my Xbox. Fuck me, it looks so much nicer with the more vibrant display. It looked so washed out before, and I was like, that game already looks washed out, right? It really needs some contrast. Well, with the more vibrant display now, you can even chuck it in
Ultra
boosted.
display. What is it
You can
called? Ultra mode display.
put it in boosted, and then you'll
Well,
actually be able to.
boosted, right?
Yeah, you'll actually be able to have a bit of color in that game. So I would highly recommend SteamOS 3.5 if you're streaming Starfield.
Can I tell you, Steve? I came this close to buying a 1 terabyte Xbox Series S today at Target.
Oh my god. You know the new Xbox is like next year. Like we saw it leaked. What are you
Sarah
doing?
needs one now, dude. I can't
What
be
you need
waiting.
to do, abandon Starfield, go back to playing Baldur's Gate so she can use the Xbox. There you go. Problem solved.
That's a move. That's a move.
Yeah, there's also some other like minor things that we didn't touch on. Improved sleep resume speed and Bluetooth connection stability. So if you really want to get back into Starfield streaming and you felt that your Steam Deck was too slow waking up, it's marginally faster
That
now.
shit was
And
already pretty fast.
and
Like,
let me tell you, you will not notice. It's so marginal. You will not notice how it's being quicker at all.
here's the thing. That was already pretty quick. I'm not gonna complain that it's faster, but there's nothing I love more than this is like such a PC like gearhead thing when we're talking like we're bragging about tech specs and it's like we're able to shave 1 second off the boots. It's like, all right, cool. Hell yeah, guys. Like I
What?
love that somebody
Wow.
cared enough about that to do it, and then they're like, this is a feature.
Well, what about improved fade transitions between applications? That's
That
also there.
that's actually good because the fade is currently pretty dog shit. The fade between when you click on a game and it like does the like we're configuring and boot
Like,
like that. It's like it's like 1 out of every 10 times I have a moment where I'm like, is my Steam Deck gonna explode? Like, is this it?
yeah,
So
I
that's
think I
probably
think
good.
that's I think it's more for like switching between apps. So like if you have say Spotify open playing music in the background and you want to jump over to your game, like
Yeah,
switching
you just
between them, it's like
but
a
still,
slightly
like the
different fade.
transition always feels jerky. Anytime you transition between screens, it's like, okay, there we go.
Yeah, it's a little bit jank at times. Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. So Green Beanie wrote in and said, "When is 3.5 gonna release on stable?" If this conversation has taught me anything, probably not for a couple weeks.
Let me say, I really hope it's not anytime soon because I would really, really like them to fix some of the major bugs in this version of SteamOS before they do.
Yeah.
Or at least delay VRR. Like if you're going to release the rest of SteamOS 3.5 with HDR support and all of the color stuff and all of that, the SMT fixes, fine. But VRR is not ready to be released. Absolutely not.
Okay. Good to know. Any other details you want to share on 3.5 before we jump into some other questions from the Steam docket?
Um, I don't think so. I mean, it's fine. I think I would have liked I liked a little bit more in here considering how long we've been waiting for a big patch. Um, but for the most part, if you don't use your Steam Deck docked, go ahead and update. If you do, and you don't, and you've got a TV where you can turn FreeSync off and you use the official dock, it's fine. If you use a third party dock, chances are you're also going to be fine. But it's not ready for prime time.
I think I'm gonna update so I can talk about it with you some more next week. And I've not docked it in so long, so I'm not too pressed about that.
Yeah, I mean, see if it works on your TV. You might have. I don't know if your TV supports VRR. I would guess it probably does,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. It does.
it's whether it supports AMD FreeSync because of
That I
HDMI's
don't know.
VRR.
I don't know if
HDMI,
it has FreeSync support.
yeah,
And I've never
HDMI's
used an
VRR
AMD
won't.
device on it that wasn't my Steam Deck, so I'm not totally sure.
Well, you have your Xbox is and PS5 is at AMD, but they
You're
don't.
right.
They
I'm
use
sorry.
H.
I just did the opposite. I'm like, we just talked about this on Nintendo, right? Then none of them do that. Stupid.
Yeah, but I because the Xbox One used to be AMD
So then
FreeSync,
hmm,
but now I think it's just HDMI Forum VRR.
I feel like it does have FreeSync.
Probably. My TV has FreeSync and G-Sync, and I don't even have an NVIDIA device that could use G-Sync. So there's like a special port, and it's got the NVIDIA logo on it, and it's like green, and it says G-Sync on it, and it's like really gamer. And I'm like, I'm never using that.
Yep. Yeah, my TV does have it.
Okay, perfect. So try it. Might end up with a black screen.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I can do for next. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mine's on here. Mine's on here. It does. Oh my god, yeah, it definitely does. It looks like every decent TV they've made since like 2018 supports it. So I think I've got it. So yeah, I'll check it out and report back. All right, so we got a couple more questions from the Steam docket we're going to jump into, and again, we've got so many in here from the last couple of weeks. We're going to do a mailbag episode one of these weeks when there is less news to talk about, but been a busy
Mhm.
couple weeks in Steam Deck land. This one comes from Stevie Yaki, though, who wrote in and said, "What's been your favorite feature added to the Steam Deck over the past year, and what feature are you most hopeful for in the next year?" I think this is a good question in
Yeah.
the context of 3.5. Is what you hope for the next year VRR still, Steve?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It would have been my favorite feature had it have worked. So I guess my favorite feature added over the past year. Oh, I don't really know what's been added since last year, but I would guess HDR at this point.
Yeah, I'm like struggling to think about the timeline of added features, but I guess it's HDR.
Because like I really liked the ability to change the refresh rate on the panel, right? That was a massive feature that they added, but that came pretty soon after launch. And I think that came, like, within a couple of months. I think it was there before you even got yours, but I was, like, really excited about the fact that you could change the refresh rate on the display finally. Um, so it would probably be HDR in the last year, I would say.
Yeah, I guess, right? Like I'm struggling to think of another thing like that that I was like dying for that then I was excited about when it came. I'm struggling to think of one. But for the
Yeah.
next year, for the next year for you, it's definitely VRR, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want VRR in the next couple of weeks, like, not next year. Aside from that, I think I want the docked improvement to be improved, the docked experience to be improved even more beyond this. I want the ability to have different performance modes. and not even I'm not even talking about game settings, right? I want the ability, because I get that that might be tricky and every game's different and it stores the game settings differently. I would really like to be able to just say, on when I'm docked on my TV, I wanna cap it at 30. When I'm handheld, I
Yeah.
wanna cap it at 40. When I'm on handheld, I wanna set a max TVP of 10 watt. When I'm docked, I want to max it all out, set the GPU clock to be the maximum, and just kind of go to town with it. And I think being able to have a different experience on docked and handheld, they need to improve that somewhat.
Yeah, I would say the that's one of them for me for sure is having some kind of feature, whether it's like setting up like profiles or something like that, but having the ability to have presets saved where when I'm in handheld, this is the default settings I use on the game, and when I'm docked, these are the default settings that I use on the game because that was a major thing that dissuaded me from taking advantage of the docked experience after a while because I don't wanna have to change the settings every time I play the game on a different display. Like, it's just annoying, and,
Yeah.
I am the kinda gamer where, like, convenience is important, and if it's gonna take me 10 minutes every time I wanna switch to plug in the dock and get it set up, and then I gotta change all my features, and then when I unplug it, it's running I in a way that doesn't work on the deck, and I gotta change everything back. Like, that's just annoying, and I don't wanna do that, and I think it speaks to a bigger problem too, where, like, I would just like there to be a preset system for game configurations the same way there is for controller configurations because that works so well.
It's tough. It's really tough, I think, because a lot of people want, like, the ability to, "I wanna pull down that I want medium textures and this resolution and this number of shadows." That's really tough because that's stored on a per game basis. It might break
Right.
between updates. You don't know if the developer's expecting to be able to store those settings on Steam. But the built-in presets would be nice for just like the stuff you can get in the quick access menu. Allow me to
Yeah.
share those and have those synced. But
I think I
ultimately, I do want like settings sharing. I'd love an
Yeah.
ability for them to add something to the Steam SDK that developers can kind of tap into and be like, okay, as well as storing saves on the cloud, I'm also going to store settings on the cloud, and then we can have the ability to toggle between them. That would be really nice.
It would be. And I totally am with you where like I get that being maybe a tall order in some cases, but I think giving us a preset situation where we could be like, anytime you connect to an external display, use this would go a long way in making that less frustrating because at the very least, then you remove a step for me and I have to go and look up a preset guide on IGN or Reddit or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Once and save it and then I'm done, right? And I can move on. Like that's all right. But when I have to, toggle between these two presets manually every time I want to take advantage of the dock, I'm never going to use the dock. I'm just not.
I dock my Steam Deck pretty regularly, and I mean, not only for charging, right? It's nice and convenient to have a place where I can plug it in and charge it. But I do play games on there pretty regularly, but I find myself playing specific types of games that I don't need to change between settings. Stuff like Jackbox or FMV games or things like Vampire Survivors. I played so much of that, but I'm not changing settings between them. It's just a game I can play docked, and then I can take it with me, and I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
changing resolutions or any of that stuff. I do completely agree that it's annoying, and it would be nice to have some improvements there.
I think it would legitimately change the way I use the deck. I think I would get a lot more usage out of it if that were the case. I would use it in docked mode more, and I would play a wider variety of games on the deck because, like with Baldur's Gate, I really wanted to play it on my TV, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it to put it to its max settings on Steam Deck for it to still look like shit. It's like it looks better on a smaller display.
Mhm.
All right, this next question, and we're gonna close it out for the day on this one. This one comes from Cold Soul. And it's interesting. It kind of ties back to our conversation last week in an interesting way. Uh, Cold Soul wrote in and said, "Dude, how cool would it be if Valve's next piece of hardware was a console? same power as a PS5 or Xbox Series X, but it ran the Steam OS on it. I'd sell my PS5 for that if they were the same in performance. It beats running an HDMI cable across the room to hook my PC up to the TV.
Cold Soul, let me tell you, download Moonlight or Sunrise or whatever the free implementation of that is. Download Moonlight and stream across the room. You'll have a decent enough experience. But I'm 100% with you. I would be so excited if they did a little PC that was $499. They could even ask AMD with their partnership, "Can we just have the same chipset, please?" Basically the same chips in the Xbox and the PS5. I'm sure AMD would be fine to just sell it to Valve as well, and then we can have a comparable experience with SteamOS and access to the entire Steam library, which would be insane.
Yeah, though I think it would be a real game changer for Valve as a whole. We talked about it a lot last week about how that could really elevate the ecosystem. You know, we talked about this, I guess, over a year ago now, right? But there was that Xbox documentary that Xbox put out on their YouTube channel. That was, I think it's Always On is the name or something like that.
Mhm.
And they talked about how they looked at the Xbox as like their play for the living room, right? And like how they could make how they could take what they did with Windows PCs and gaming there and bring a living room box that competes with what Sony was doing with the PlayStation, right? And like I see that for Valve. Like obviously they've already cornered the market on PC gaming with like 90% of the people that play PC games. And the idea that like the Steam Deck has been this kind of evangelization tool for folks that don't want the baggage of PC gaming, but want to take advantage of the Steam ecosystem, want to take advantage of, indie games coming there first, want to take advantage of playing fan games and mods and hacks and all the fun stuff of PC gaming, but without you needing the technical know-how to build a rig and or to design a rig and then build it and maintain it, right? That's something that a lot of folks just like don't have the bandwidth for, right? And that's not what they want out of the hobby. What they want out of the hobby is playing games. And the Steam ecosystem is a great place to buy and play games. And the Steam Deck has shown that that doesn't have to be uh a walled garden, right? It doesn't have to be a thing that's alienating to casuals. And I think if they are able to develop a set top box that mirrors that experience, but rather than a handheld, it's just, hey, it's a home console. You know what a home console is, right? Like you're familiar with that. I think that really will speak to a lot of people. I do.
Yeah, me too. And we spoke about that at length last week. If you want to hear about our ideas for a Steam home consolified PC, I think the article we were reading was calling it. Go check that episode out. It was a really good discussion. Does have a VR angle to it as well. So if you're interested in VR, it's well worth a listen, I think.
Yeah, make sure you go check it out. So remember, gang, if you want to write in for the Steam docket, you can hit us up, questions at flipscreen.games. You can come join the Discord and keep the conversation rolling between episodes, however you choose to get involved or write in. We'd love to hear from you. We've got a ton of questions in the Steam docket that have been building up. So, literally, the first week where we don't have news, we're going to go all out on a mailbag episode. So, keep writing in with your questions, and we will, of course, answer them as we can. But thank you so much to everybody who's written in so far. We really appreciate it. If you
Yeah.
want to, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm gonna say also go and listen to this week's Nintendo noise if you are interested in some weird Valve tie-in, and you can hear Phil Spencer talking about buying up Valve as a Microsoft product.
Xbox
And
ready to buy Valve and Nintendo. You got to go listen to Nintendo noise,
thanks,
everybody.
I
It's
go listen to
crazy.
that one as well. That was a good episode.
Yeah, we had a good time on that one. So go check it out. However, you choose to get involved, we really appreciate y'all tuning in for this week's episode of the Steam Deck podcast. Remember, over on flipscreen.games, you can get involved in the community. You can write into the show. You can go above and beyond on Patreon to show your support, get the show early, get a bunch of other perks and goodies, and most importantly, help keep these mics and lights hot. However, you choose to get involved, thanks a lot. We appreciate you. Go click on some stuff, it helps us out a lot. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.